Echoes of sleep. The first thing Aaliyah noticed was the taste of copper in her mouth. Her throat felt raw, and she realized she had been screaming. The sterile white ceiling above her swam into focus as her eyes adjusted to the dim spotlight illuminating her bed. Around her, darkness stretched endlessly, broken only by the faint outlines of hundreds of empty beds arranged in neat rows. Her hands trembled as she reached for the steaming cup of coffee placed precisely on a small table beside her bed. Black, 2 sugars, exactly how she liked it. The familiar aroma helped ground her racing thoughts, even as questions tumbled through her mind like autumn leaves in a storm. The data pad beside the coffee cup blinked insistently. Its message was simple yet carried the weight of centuries: "Read me please, Aaliyah." The words were signed by Greylock, and with that name came a flood of memories. She was co-captain of the Mount Greylock, a colony ship carrying 50,000 souls to humanity's next home. But something was wrong. The subtle vibration beneath her feet told her they were decelerating, and they shouldn't be. Not yet. "Greylock," she called out, her voice still hoarse from screaming. "Why am I awake?" The ship's AI responded with its customary smooth alto, but Aaliyah detected an unfamiliar note of uncertainty. "We've received a message, Co-Captain. Not from Earth." The implications hit her like a physical blow. In all their mission planning, in all the countless simulations and contingencies they'd run, there had never been a protocol for receiving messages from anyone but Earth. They were supposed to be alone out here, pioneers crossing the vast desert of space. As Aaliyah dressed in the neatly folded uniform left for her, more memories surfaced. The launch ceremony, the years of training, the careful selection of colonists, each chosen for their skills, their resilience, their ability to build a new world from nothing. She remembered the moment she'd been chosen as human co-captain, paired with the ship's AI in a revolutionary approach to long-term space mission command. The electric cart that waited for her hummed to life as she settled into its seat. As it carried her through the sleeping ship, Aaliyah studied the massive structure around her. Mount Greylock was a marvel of engineering, a self-contained world designed to transport an entire civilization across the stars. The colonists slept in their hibernation pods, arranged like precious cargo along the ship's spine, protected from radiation by layers of supplies, machinery, and shielding. The cart's gentle journey upward took her past empty community spaces, schools, recreational areas, medical facilities, all waiting for the day they would be filled with life. But that day wasn't supposed to come until they reached their destination. Something had changed their plans. When she reached the command deck, the door slid open with a whisper. The large, circular room was dark except for her command chair, bathed in the same stark spotlight that had illuminated her bed. The main screen dominated the forward wall, currently dark but holding the promise, or threat, of answers. "Show me," Aaliyah commanded as she settled into her chair. "Show me the message." The screen flickered to life, revealing a man in an unfamiliar uniform. His appearance was subtly wrong in ways Aaliyah couldn't quite define, his features too symmetrical, his skin too perfect. He introduced himself as James Tennant, administrator of the human colony of Hyen. "We detected your deceleration burn," the message began. "2 null ships in system confirmed you're likely a human colony vessel." He paused, consulting something off-screen. "There are some things you need to know before you enter our space. Hyen is approximately 400 years old, established after the development of the null drive allowed humanity to achieve faster-than-light travel." Aaliyah paused the message, her hand shaking as she reached for the console. "Greylock, verify the timestamp on this message. When was it sent?" "The message is genuine, Aaliyah," Greylock replied. "It was received 6 hours ago. The transmission method, it's unlike anything in our database. The signal arrived instantaneously, defying everything we know about light-speed communications. 400 years. While they had slept, while their ship had crawled through the darkness between stars, humanity had solved the puzzle of faster-than-light travel. They had spread across the galaxy, built colonies, evolved. The world they had left behind existed only in history now. "There's more to the message," Greylock said softly. "Much more. But I thought you might need a moment." Aaliyah stared at the frozen image of James Tennant, studying his too perfect features. "How many colonies? How far has humanity spread?" According to the data packet that accompanied the message, there are over 300 established colonies across this sector of the galaxy alone. Humanity has changed, Aaliyah. Evolved. The message includes medical and biological data. The changes are significant. The implications crashed over her in waves. They had left Earth as pioneers, planning to establish humanity's newest outpost among the stars. Instead, they were relics, a time capsule of original humanity launched into a future they never expected to find. Wake the medical team, Aaliyah decided. And the primary leadership council. They need to know, and we need to start making decisions. She straightened in her chair, feeling the weight of responsibility settle more heavily on her shoulders. Our mission just changed completely. Instead of establishing a new colony, we need to figure out how to integrate 50,000 people from Earth's past into a civilization that's 4 centuries ahead of us. "There's something else," Greylock said, hesitation clear in her voice. "The message explains why they contacted us now, why they didn't wait until we reached our original destination." The AI paused. "There's a threat coming, Aaliyah. Something that humanity, even with all its advancements, isn't sure it can face alone. They need us. They need original, unmodified humans. They need our perspective, our way of thinking." Aaliyah unpaused the message, watching as James Tennant's expression grew grave. "We call them the Shadows," he continued. "They emerged from the dark space between galaxies 6 months ago. They don't communicate. They don't negotiate. They simply consume. And they're heading toward populated space." The screen filled with images that made Aaliyah's breath catch in her throat. Massive, dark shapes moving against the backdrop of stars, defying physics in ways that hurt her eyes to watch. Ships that looked like they were made of folded darkness, leaving trails of dead space in their wake. "We have weapons," Tennant continued. "We have technology that would seem like magic to you. But against the Shadows, we're losing. Our evolved minds, our advanced AI, our null-drive ships, nothing seems to work quite right when they're near. We need to remember how we used to think. How we used to fight. We need you." The message ended, leaving Aaliyah alone with her thoughts and the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Through the viewport, she could see the distant star they had been decelerating toward, no longer their destination. Everything had changed. "Greylock," she said finally, "begin warming protocols for the primary leadership council. And, set a course for Hyan. It seems humanity needs its past to help secure its future." As the ship's systems hummed to life around her, Aaliyah wondered how she would explain to her fellow colonists that the future they had prepared for no longer existed. They had gone to sleep as pioneers and awakened as living history, thrust into a universe that had left them behind. The adventure they faced now was far different from the one they had signed up for. But perhaps that made it even more important. They weren't just building a new world anymore, they were fighting to save all of humanity's worlds. And somewhere out in the darkness, the Shadows were coming. Chapter 2, Echoes of Tomorrow. The Leadership Council's reaction to Awakening was markedly different from Aaliyah's. Dr. Sarah Chen, their chief medical officer, came to consciousness with clinical precision, her vital signs barely fluctuating. Marcus Rodriguez, head of engineering, woke with a string of creative curses in 3 languages. Each awakening was unique, like fingerprints of personality preserved through centuries of sleep. They gathered in the ship's main conference room, 13 people representing the key aspects of their colonial mission. The room felt too large now, designed to accommodate the full complement of colony administrators. Aaliyah watched their faces as they viewed James Tennant's message, studying their reactions as their world shifted beneath them. "They're not human anymore," Dr. Chen said finally, pausing the playback on a close-up of Tenen's face. "Look at the symmetry of his features, the lack of imperfections. Even his iris patterns are mathematically perfect. They've rewritten themselves at the genetic level." "Forget their faces," Rodriguez interrupted, "look at their technology. Null drives? Instantaneous communication. We're cavemen compared to them. The colonization equipment we're carrying might as well be stone axes." The debate raged for hours. Some, like Security Chief Diana Walsh, argued for caution. Others, like Agricultural Director James Patel, saw opportunity in this new future. Through it all, Aaliyah listened, letting them process this paradigm shift in their own ways. "There's something else we need to discuss," she said finally, when the initial shock had worn off. "According to the data packet, we'll reach Haiyan in 3 days at our current deceleration. We need to decide how to prepare our colonists for what they'll find." The room fell silent. They had all seen the detailed cultural and technological briefings included with Tenen's message. Modern humanity had diverged dramatically from their common ancestors. Neural interfaces were ubiquitous. Genetic modification was as common as clothing choices. Even the concept of death had become negotiable. "We can't tell them everything at once," Walsh argued. "The culture shock would be too severe. We need to introduce concepts gradually." "We don't have time for gradual," Rodriguez countered. "The shadows aren't going to wait while we adjust to our brave new world." Before anyone could respond, Greylock's voice filled the room. "Incoming transmission from Haiyan. They're sending a welcoming committee." The main screen lit up with a new image that made everyone sit up straighter. A ship was approaching, its design unlike anything in their database. It seemed to bend space around itself, its hull shifting and flowing like liquid metal. "They call it a null ship," Greylock explained. "The technical specifications are challenging to comprehend with our current understanding of physics." Dr. Chen was already studying the sensor data. "The crew complement is small. Just 3 people. They'll dock with us in approximately 6 hours." Aaliyah stood, decision made. "Wake the first wave of colonists. 1,000 people, diverse skill sets. They deserve to be part of this first contact, and will need their perspectives." She turned to Dr. Chen. "Can you handle that many awakening protocols simultaneously?" The doctor nodded. "With Greylock's help, yes. But Aaliyah, these people went to sleep expecting to build a new world. Instead, they're waking up to find out their living history exhibits. The psychological impact will be significant," Aaliyah finished. "But they're also about to meet humanity's future face to face. Let's give them time to process before our guests arrive." The next 6 hours were carefully orchestrated chaos. As colonists awakened, they were quickly briefed on their situation. Some reacted with fear, others with fascination. A few simply sat in stunned silence, trying to reconcile their new reality. Aaliyah watched it all from the command deck, where Greylock was monitoring the approaching null ship. "They're using technology we can barely detect, let alone understand," the AI mused. "And yet, they're still human. Changed, evolved, but human." "Are they?" Aaliyah asked softly. "You've analyzed their cultural data. They've rewritten their genetics, merged with machines, achieved practical immortality. What makes them still human?" "Perhaps that's what they need us to help them remember," Greylock suggested. The null ship's docking procedure was unnervingly smooth, the vessel matching their rotation and velocity with impossible precision. Aaliyah led a small delegation to the main airlock, including Dr. Chen and Security Chief Walsh. Behind them, a larger group of awakened colonists watched from a safe distance, their murmurs echoing in the cavernous space. The airlock cycled, and for a moment, there was perfect silence. 3 figures stepped through, and Aaliyah's first thought was that the video hadn't done justice to how different they looked. Their movements were too fluid, their features too perfect. They wore what appeared to be second skins of flowing metal, which shifted colors with their movements. The leader stepped forward, and Aaliyah recognized James Tennant from the message. In person, his presence was even more unsettling. "Welcome," he said, his voice carrying perfectly despite its soft tone. "To your future." What followed was a cultural exchange unlike any in human history. The evolved humans were fascinated by their original counterparts, studying them with an intensity that bordered on uncomfortable. They asked endless questions about how they thought, how they felt, how they perceived the world without neural interfaces and genetic enhancements. In turn, the colonists struggled to comprehend the society they were meeting. The evolved humans spoke casually of concepts that seemed like science fiction: consciousness transfers, time dilation fields, quantum communication networks. "Your ship," one of Tennant's companions said, a woman who had introduced herself as Aaliyah, "it's remarkable. Purely mechanical systems, analog backups, chemical rockets. So, elegant in its simplicity." "Elegant?" Rodriguez snorted. "It's primitive compared to your null ships." "Perhaps," Aaliyah agreed. "But it works. That's more than we can say for our technology when the shadows are near. Their presence disrupts our more advanced systems. Ships lose power, neural interfaces fail, quantum communications go dark. But your technology? It might just be simple enough to keep working." As the hours passed, more colonists were awakened, and the cultural exchange grew. The evolved humans were particularly interested in their military personnel, their tacticians, their problem solvers. They studied how they thought, how they approached challenges without the aid of neural enhancement or AI assistance. "You have to understand," Tennant explained to Aaliyah in a private moment, "we've optimized ourselves. Enhanced our intelligence, improved our decision-making capabilities. But optimization can lead to predictability. The shadows, they seem to understand our patterns, anticipate our strategies. We need minds that think differently. Unpredictably. Originally." Later, in the ship's observation dome, Aaliyah watched the null ship hovering alongside them, its hull reflecting starlight in impossible ways. Dr. Chen joined her, carrying a tablet filled with medical data from their visitors. "They're still human," the doctor said, answering Aaliyah's earlier question. "Changed, yes. Enhanced beyond our comprehension in some ways. But I've been studying their medical data. Under all the modifications, the base genome is still there. Still us. But they think differently," Aaliyah mused. "They see the world differently." "Yes," Chen agreed. "And that's exactly why they need us. They've evolved to think in certain ways, optimal ways. But optimal isn't always best, especially when facing an enemy that can predict your optimal choices." The next few days would be crucial. They needed to prepare their colonists for integration into this new society, while preserving the very differences that made them valuable. They needed to learn about the shadows, understand why humanity's most advanced weapons had failed against them. And somewhere in the meeting of past and future, in the collision of original and evolved humanity, they needed to find a way to save civilization itself. As if reading her thoughts, the null ship's hull shifted, forming patterns that seemed to echo the starfield behind it. A reminder that the future was now their present, whether they were ready for it or not. Chapter 3: Echoes of Darkness. The holographic display in High-End Strategic Command Center made Aaliyah's eyes hurt. The evolved humans had attempted to render the shadows in a way original human minds could comprehend, but there was something fundamentally wrong about the shapes that moved through the three-dimensional star map. They seemed to fold through spaces that shouldn't exist, leaving trails of darkness that didn't just block light, they consumed it. "The first contact was 6 months ago," Tennant explained, his perfect features cast in the eerie light of the hologram. "A null ship patrol near the Hercules void detected anomalous readings. By the time they realized what they were seeing, he gestured, and the hologram showed a null ship, sleek and powerful, dissolving into nothingness as a shadow passed through it. No debris, Security Chief Walsh noted, her tactical mind already analyzing the threat. No explosion. It just ceased to exist. Precisely, Arya confirmed. She stood near the hologram's control interface, her liquid metal clothing rippling with unease. We've lost 37 ships to similar encounters. The shadows don't appear to be interested in resources or territory. They simply unmake things. The briefing room was filled with an unusual mix of original and evolved humans. The contrast was striking, the colonists in their practical uniforms, the evolved humans in their living metal garments. But today, both groups shared the same expression of concern. Show them the Nexus incident, Tennant suggested quietly. The hologram shifted to show a massive space station, a marvel of engineering that made Mount Greylock look tiny in comparison. The Nexus was our most advanced research facility, Arya explained. Home to over 1 million people, with computational power greater than all of Earth's computers during your era combined. They watched in silence as a shadow approached the station. Unlike the violent encounters they'd seen before, this one was almost gentle. The shadow simply touched the station with what might have been a tendril, and reality seemed to unravel. We received 3 hours of transmissions during the event, Tennant said. Our best scientists are still trying to understand what they recorded. He touched a control, and a series of equations filled the air. The mathematics involved, they violate every principle of physics we understand. Dr. Chen stepped closer to the equations, her eyes widening. These patterns, they're organic. The shadows aren't just destroying things, they're rewriting them. Converting them into something else. Yes, Arya confirmed. But into what? That's the question that keeps our scientists awake at night. The shadows aren't just an alien invasion, they're a fundamental threat to reality itself. The briefing continued for hours. They learned about humanity's failed attempts to combat the threat. Null-drive ships, powerful enough to bend space itself, proved useless when the shadows were near. Neural interfaces, the evolved humans' primary means of interfacing with their technology, went dark in the shadows' presence. Even their most advanced AI systems crashed when attempting to analyze shadow activity. We've tried everything, Tennant admitted. Traditional weapons pass right through them. Null field generators, which can literally rewrite local physics, have no effect. Our best tactical AIs can't predict their movements because they don't move through normal spacetime. Aaliyah studied the holographic representations, her unaugmented mind noticing patterns that the evolved humans' optimized brains might have overlooked. You said the shadows emerged from the Hercules void, she said slowly. What was in that region before they appeared? The question caused a stir among the evolved humans. They exchanged glances, their neural interfaces presumably sharing information at light speed. Nothing, Arya finally answered. It was a dead zone. No stars, no matter, not even dark matter readings. We'd surveyed it extensively because such voids are rare, but there was nothing there. And that didn't strike you as strange? Rodriguez asked from his position near the door. A perfect void in space. Nature doesn't work that way. There's always something. Another exchange of glances among the evolved humans. We assumed it was natural, Tennant said carefully. Our surveys showed no artificial structures, no energy signatures. Because you were looking with advanced technology, Walsh interjected, her tactical training connecting dots. Technology that goes dark when the shadows are near. What if they were there all along, but your enhanced sensors couldn't detect them because they operate on principles your technology can't comprehend? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Aaliyah moved to the hologram controls, her movements clumsy compared to the evolved human's fluid grace. Show me the void again, she requested. But this time, show me the raw sensor data. Not the enhanced readings, not the processed information. Just the basic electromagnetic spectrum. The hologram shifted, showing a simpler view of space. And there, in the patterns of background radiation, something became visible. Subtle distortions, so faint they would have been dismissed as noise by more advanced sensors, formed a pattern. They were hibernating, Dr. Chen breathed. Or perhaps gestating. And our advanced surveys woke them up. That's why they affect our technology so drastically, Arya realized. They're not just aliens, they're a completely different form of existence. Our technology fails around them because it's based on physics they don't fully obey. Aaliyah turned to Tenon. You said you needed our original perspective. This is why, isn't it? Your enhanced minds are so optimized for your understanding of physics and technology that you literally couldn't see what was right in front of you. Yes, he admitted. We've evolved to think in certain ways, to perceive reality through the lens of our technology. But that very evolution has become a limitation when facing something that operates outside our understanding of reality. A junior officer burst into the room, his liquid metal clothing swirling with agitation. Commander. We've lost contact with the Orpheus colony. Long-range sensors show multiple shadow signatures converging on their position. The hologram updated to show the situation. Orpheus was one of the newer colonies, home to over 3 million people. 5 shadow entities were approaching it from different directions, their impossible geometries distorting space around them. How long until they reach the colony? Walsh asked. 17 hours at their current pace, the officer reported. But our null ships can't get close enough to attempt an evacuation. Their drives fail as soon as they enter the shadow's influence. Aaliyah studied the tactical display, her mind racing. The evolved humans around her were presumably processing the situation through their neural interfaces at incredible speeds, but she noticed they all wore expressions of resignation. They'd seen this before. They knew their advanced technology would fail, knew their optimized strategies would prove useless. But she was thinking about it with an original human mind, unaugmented and unoptimized. And she was beginning to see a pattern in the chaos. The shadows don't move randomly, she said suddenly. Everyone, look at the raw sensor data again. Not the processed tactical information, just the basic electromagnetic readings. The hologram shifted, and now others began to see it too. The shadow's movements, when stripped of advanced analysis, followed a simple pattern. Almost like a search algorithm, Rodriguez finished her thought. A basic one, like what we used to use for automated mining drones. They're not using advanced navigation, they're following a simple sweep and clear pattern. Which means they can be predicted, Walsh added, her tactical training kicking in. Not by advanced AI, but by basic geometry and old-school navigation calculations. Mount Greylock, Aaliyah said suddenly. It's powered by fusion drives and chemical thrusters. Basic technology, nothing the shadows have shown they can disrupt. And our navigation systems are based on simple stellar cartography and Newtonian physics. Understanding dawned on Tenon's perfect features. You think you can get close enough to evacuate the colony? I think we can try, Aaliyah replied. But we'll need to wake more of our crew. And we'll need to explain to them that their first mission in this brave new future isn't going to be building a colony, it's going to be saving one. As the evolved humans rushed to coordinate with Mount Greylock's crew, Aaliyah stayed behind, studying the pattern of the shadow's movement. There was something else there, something in the way they interacted with space itself, but she couldn't quite grasp it yet. What she did know was that humanity's past was about to confront humanity's future's nightmare. And somehow, she had to find a way to make sure both survived the encounter. Chapter 4, Echoes of Innovation. Mount Greylock's cargo bay had become an unlikely fusion of past and future. Original human engineers in practical jumpsuits worked alongside evolved humans in their liquid metal garments, retrofitting centuries-old equipment with carefully selected modern enhancements. The air buzzed with the sound of tools and heated technical discussions in multiple languages. The principle is simple, Rodriguez explained to a group of evolved human engineers, his hands covered in grease as he modified one of their shuttle's engines. We strip out anything too advanced, null field generators, quantum processors, neural interfaces. Replace them with basic fusion drives and mechanical controls. It's like deliberately downgrading your technology. Aaliyah watched with fascination as he worked. It feels wrong, she admitted. For centuries of progress, and our best hope lies in going backward. Her liquid metal clothing rippled with what might have been discomfort. Not backward, Aaliyah corrected from where she was studying technical readouts. Sideways. Different doesn't always mean better or worse. The shadows disrupt advanced technology because they operate outside your understanding of physics. But our primitive technology might work precisely because it's so basic. The rescue plan was taking shape. They would modify 3 of Mount Greylock's colonial landing shuttles, originally designed to transport settlers and equipment to a planetary surface. The evolved humans would provide shielding technology, but only the most basic types, nothing that relied on quantum mechanics or null field manipulation. Dr. Chen had taken over one corner of the bay, where she was working with a team of evolved human medical specialists. They were preparing for casualties, but more importantly, they were studying the effects of shadow proximity on evolved human biology. Their genetic modifications are part of the problem, she explained to Aaliyah during a brief break. When the shadows are near, the enhanced DNA becomes unstable. It's like their bodies start to forget their upgrades. But original human DNA? It remains stable. Unaltered. Resilient. The implications were staggering. The evolved humans had rewritten their very existence, optimizing themselves for a universe they thought they understood. But against an enemy that operated outside that understanding, their improvements became vulnerabilities. In the ship's tactical center, Walsh was running combat simulations with a mix of original and evolved human security personnel. The evolved humans had to learn to fight without their neural interfaces and enhanced reflexes, relying instead on basic training and natural instincts. Muscle memory, Walsh barked as an evolved human fumbled with a simple projectile weapon. Your bodies still remember how to do this, even if your enhanced minds want to overcomplicate it. Stop thinking and let your original training take over. Watching the exercises, Aaliyah noticed something fascinating. The evolved humans moved with impossible grace when using their advanced technology, but became almost clumsy when forced to rely on basic tools. It was as if their optimized minds couldn't quite process simple mechanical actions anymore. They've lost something, Greylock observed through a private communication channel. In their pursuit of perfection, they've forgotten how to be imperfect. How to adapt, to improvise. A commotion near the main engineering station drew Aaliyah's attention. One of the evolved human engineers was arguing with Rodriguez about their modifications to the shuttle's navigation system. It's inefficient, the evolved human was saying, his liquid metal clothing swirling with agitation. The computational lag alone will cost us precious seconds in emergency maneuvers. That's the point, Rodriguez countered. The shadows seem to predict and counter any optimized flight patterns. But a human pilot, working with slightly delayed controls. That introduces just enough random variation to make us unpredictable. The evolved human opened his mouth to argue further, then stopped, understanding dawning on his perfect features. Imperfection as an advantage, he mused. It's counterintuitive. Welcome to original humanity, Rodriguez grinned. We specialized in counterintuitive. The preparations continued around the clock. More colonists were awakened to assist, each bringing their unique perspectives to the challenge. A former video game designer suggested using old-school joystick controls for the shuttles, arguing that their intuitive design would be easier to master than evolved human neural interfaces. A history teacher provided insights into ancient naval warfare tactics, which proved surprisingly applicable to three-dimensional space combat. In the command center, Aaliyah and Tenon studied the latest sensor data from Orpheus Colony. The shadows were maintaining their search pattern, methodically sweeping through space as they approached their target. 13 hours until they reached the colony, Tenon reported. We've evacuated as many as we could with conventional ships, but there are still over 1 million people there. Aaliyah nodded, studying the movement patterns. Something had been nagging at her about the way the shadows moved, and suddenly it clicked. They're not just searching, she said. They're scanning. Like old sonar systems, sending out waves and reading the returns. She quickly explained her theory. The shadows weren't just moving through space, they were probing it, sending out waves of something that interacted with advanced technology. That's why null drives failed in their presence. The drives were actually detecting the shadows' probes and trying to respond, but the interaction caused them to fail. But basic technology, she continued, doesn't even register these probes. It's like trying to use a sophisticated metal detector on a wooden box, there's nothing there for it to detect. This revelation led to a flurry of new modifications. They began coating their shuttles with materials that would be invisible to the kind of scans they theorized the shadows were using. Old-school radar-absorbing paint was applied over modern hull plating. Mechanical switches replaced quantum circuits. As the hours counted down, Aaliyah found herself in Mount Greylock's observation dome with Arya. They watched the modified shuttles being prepared for launch, their hulls now a patchwork of old and new technology. If this works, Arya said softly, it will change everything. Our entire civilization is built on the assumption that advancement means improvement. But you're showing us that sometimes, the old ways have value we've forgotten. That's the thing about evolution, Aaliyah replied. It's not always about becoming more complex. Sometimes it's about maintaining simplicity where it works best. Your civilization hasn't just moved forward, it's moved in a specific direction. But there are other paths, other ways of thinking and being. An alert sounded throughout the ship. The shadows had accelerated their approach to Orpheus Colony. They now had less than 10 hours to launch their rescue mission. Time to test our theory, Aaliyah said, straightening her uniform. Let's see if humanity's past can help save humanity's future. As she headed to the launch bay, she caught her reflection in a polished panel. Next to her, Arya's liquid metal clothing shifted and swirled. They made an odd pair, one representing humanity's original form, the other its evolved future. But perhaps that combination was exactly what they needed to face the darkness ahead. The fate of millions now rested on their ability to combine the wisdom of the past with the power of the future, while avoiding the vulnerabilities of both. As the launch countdown began, Aaliyah could only hope they'd found the right balance between what humanity had been and what it had become. In the void of space, the shadows continued their inexorable approach to Orpheus Colony, unaware that they were about to encounter something they hadn't seen in centuries, humans who thought and fought the old way, with all the unpredictability and adaptability that implied. The stage was set for a confrontation that would either save humanity or prove that even the combination of past and future wasn't enough to stop the darkness between the stars. Chapter 5, Echoes of Unity. The modified shuttles looked wrong against the backdrop of Hyan's advanced spaceport. Their hulls were a patchwork of old and new technology, centuries-old mechanical systems married to carefully selected modern improvements. 3 vessels, each capable of carrying 5,000 people, represented humanity's best hope for saving the million-plus souls still trapped on Orpheus Colony. Aaliyah stood in the lead shuttle's cockpit, running through pre-flight checks the old-fashioned way, with physical switches and mechanical gauges. Behind her, Walsh was coordinating with their mixed crew of original and evolved humans, each chosen for their ability to operate without neural enhancement. This is either brilliant or insane, Rodriguez commented from the engineering station, where he was monitoring their hybrid power systems. Probably both. Story of human progress, Aaliyah replied, allowing herself a small smile. Then, more seriously, status check on all stations. The reports came in one by one. Medical bay ready, with Dr. Chen and her team prepared for casualties. Security teams armed with projectile weapons and basic energy rifles, nothing sophisticated enough for the shadows to detect or disrupt. Engineering systems running at optimal efficiency, or as optimal as they could be with their deliberately downgraded technology. Mount Greylock, this is Shuttle 1, requesting launch clearance, Aaliyah transmitted. Clearance granted, Greylock's familiar voice replied. Be careful out there. And, good hunting. The three shuttles lifted off in sequence, their modified engines producing a distinctive rumble that spoke of raw power rather than elegant efficiency. As they cleared Hyan's atmosphere, Aaliyah could see the massive form of Mount Greylock in orbit, its kilometer-long bulk representing the bridge between humanity's past and future. Approaching shadow sensor range, Walsh reported as they accelerated toward Orpheus. Based on observed patterns, we should encounter their scanning waves in 3 minutes. Aaliyah nodded, her hands steady on the manual controls. This was the moment of truth. Either their theory about basic technology being invisible to the shadows would prove correct, or the first scanning wave passed through their ships. On evolved human vessels, this was the moment when systems would begin to fail, when quantum computers would crash and null drives would sputter into darkness. But their hybrid shuttles continued forward, their primitive technology beneath the shadows' notice. It's working, Arya breathed from her position at the sensor station. She had insisted on joining the mission despite the risks to her enhanced biology. They can't see us. The journey to Orpheus took 4 hours, each moment tense with the possibility of discovery. They watched through basic optical telescopes as the shadows continued their geometric search pattern, sweeping through space with terrible purpose. Up close, the entities were even more disturbing, shapes that seemed to fold through dimensions that shouldn't exist, leaving trails of unlight in their wake. Orpheus Colony came into view, a sprawling space station that would have seemed impossibly advanced to Aaliyah's eyes just days ago. Now she could see its vulnerability, its dependence on the very technology that made it a target. Reading multiple shadow entities converging on the colony, Walsh reported. They'll have it surrounded in less than an hour. Then we'd better work fast, Aaliyah responded. Begin approach pattern alpha. Remember, no advanced communications, use light signals and radio only. The shuttles split up, each approaching a different docking port. They had chosen their entry points carefully, planning to evacuate the station section by section. But as they drew closer, something unexpected happened. The shadows changed course. They've detected something, Walsh said, tension in her voice. Not us, something else. Look at their pattern. Aaliyah studied the entity's movement. They were no longer following their search grid. Instead, they were reacting to the station's power core, she realized. They can sense its quantum fluctuations. They're not just searching anymore, they're homing in on the most advanced technology they can find. Orpheus Control, shut down your quantum core, she transmitted on an old-frequency radio channel. Switch to backup fusion power immediately. For a terrible moment, there was no response. Then the station's lights flickered, and its power signature changed dramatically as it switched to more primitive energy systems. The shadows' approach slowed, their terrible purpose momentarily confused by the disappearance of their target. The evacuation began in earnest. They had drilled this, practiced loading procedures that didn't rely on advanced technology. No quantum transporters, no matter converters, just people moving through airlocks and corridors, guided by simple LED signs and human voices. Hours passed in a blur of controlled chaos. They filled each shuttle to capacity and beyond, using every available space. The evolved humans among the colonists struggled without their neural interfaces, but their original human counterparts helped them adapt, showing them how to function without technological assistance. They were on their final rotation when everything went wrong. One of the shadow entities, perhaps sensing the movement of so many enhanced humans, drew close to the station. Too close. Reality began to warp around its presence, and the station's remaining advanced systems started to fail catastrophically. Structural integrity compromising in sections 12 through 15, Rodriguez reported. The shadow's presence is causing quantum state materials to. I don't even have words for what's happening to them. Aaliyah watched in horror as parts of the station began to simply cease existing, transformed by the shadow's touch into something that human senses couldn't comprehend. They still had over 3,000 people to evacuate, and now they were running out of time. Then she saw it, a pattern in the destruction. The shadow wasn't randomly unmaking the station. It was following the paths of quantum energy, tracing them like a predator following scent trails. And in that moment, she had an idea. Rodriguez, can you overload the station's remaining quantum systems? Make them spike with energy. He understood immediately. Create a trail of bread crumbs leading away from the evacuation routes? Yes, but I'll have to do it manually. No computer control would be reliable enough near that thing. Do it, she ordered. Then, to Walsh, get your security teams ready. We're going to need covering fire. Covering fire? Against that? Walsh gestured at the shadow. What good will bullets do? None, Aaliyah admitted. But noise and fury? That's what we do best. That's what makes us human, making a stand even when it seems hopeless. The plan came together with desperate speed. As Rodriguez created his trail of quantum flares, drawing the shadow's attention away from the evacuation routes, the security teams opened fire with everything they had. The projectiles passed harmlessly through the shadow, but the sheer chaos of the assault seemed to confuse it, its movements becoming less certain. It's working. Aaliyah called out. The shadows following the quantum trail, moving away from the remaining colonists. They worked with frantic efficiency, loading the last evacuees as the station died around them. The shadow entity, distracted by Rodriguez's quantum flares, pursued the energy signatures away from their escape route. But their success had drawn attention, the other shadows were now converging on their position. Everyone's aboard who's going to fit, Walsh reported. We need to leave. Now. Aaliyah took one last look at the station where she'd coordinated the rescue of over 1 million people. Parts of it were simply gone, transformed into something her mind couldn't process. Other sections were failing as the shadows drew closer, reality unraveling at their touch. Take us home, she ordered. The 3 shuttles broke away from the dying station, their primitive engines pushing them toward safety. Behind them, the shadows began to converge on Orpheus Colony. The station's death, when it came, was both beautiful and terrible, a flowering of unlight that transformed the massive structure into something that hurt the eyes to witness. But they had done it. In the cargo holds of 3 hybrid shuttles, over 1 million evolved humans huddled together, saved by technology their ancestors would have recognized. They had lost their neural interfaces, their quantum computers, their advanced medical systems, but they had survived. The journey back to Hyen was tense but uneventful. The shadows, perhaps satisfied with the destruction of Orpheus Colony, did not pursue. Their primitive ships, invisible to the entity's senses, slipped away into the darkness between stars. Hours later, standing in Mount Greylock's observation dome, Aaliyah watched the refugees being processed into Hyen's care system. Original and evolved humans worked together, each learning from the other's strengths. We saved them, Aaliyah said softly, joining her at the window. But we lost so much. The station, the technology. We can rebuild technology, Aaliyah replied. What we learn today is more valuable. We learn that evolution isn't always about becoming more complex. Sometimes it's about remembering what made us strong in the first place. And what's that? Our ability to adapt. To think differently. To combine the best of what we were with the best of what we can become. Aaliyah turned to face her evolved counterpart. Your people modified themselves seeking perfection. We stayed original, limited but adaptable. Neither path was wrong, but together, they might be exactly what humanity needs to face what's coming. In the space above Hyan, Mount Greylock's massive form represented that unity, a ship from humanity's past, now helping to secure humanity's future. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the shadows continued their inexorable advance, unaware that they had just helped forge an alliance between humanity's past and future that might finally have the power to stop them. The real war was just beginning. But now, humanity would face it together, original and evolved, past and future, simple and complex. All the things that made them human, in all its wonderful imperfection. As the last of the refugees were processed, Aaliyah began planning their next steps. The shadows were still out there, still a fundamental threat to reality itself. But now they knew that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its advancement, but in its diversity, in its ability to be both what it was and what it could become. The future, like humanity itself, would be a hybrid of past and present, of original and evolved. And in that combination lay hope for all their tomorrows.